A crazy week in New York, and we've got just the guy to help break it all down. Joe Henry alongside Owen Kelty on One on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show, joined now by a special guest, Zach Braziller, sports reporter for the New York Post, covering St. John's men's basketball, college basketball in general, football, baseball, but most pertinently the NBA, the New York Knicks, covered their 2025 playoff run. Zach, thanks so much for taking the time.
What's up, guys? My pleasure.
Awesome. So we'll jump right into it. Knicks lose in six to the Pacers just a few days ago. An unceremonious end to what was a pretty historic season, their first ECF appearance since 2000, but all that feels like eons ago because of what broke out just a couple days ago. The New York Knicks have fired head coach Tom Thibodeau after 5 seasons. One of the most polarizing front office decisions that we've seen, I think, in the NBA in some time. What was your reaction to that, and just how do you feel in general about the move?
Yeah, I was surprised. I, I think the consensus was kind of that, if they lost to the Pistons, probably would move on. If it was a one-side loss to the Celtics, 50-50. But when they get to the conference finals, you kind of thought um, he would stay. Yeah, I was surprised. And, there are reports now today that they're going to request permission to talk to Jason Kidd. Um, my issue with the move is there isn't a clear upgrade. Like I think Thibodeau is a top 10 coach in the league. I'm not saying he's top two or three. I'm not saying he's Eric Spoelstra or, you know, someone of that ilk, maybe not Steve Kerr, but like I the names you're hearing, like I don't necessarily think are upgrades. I mean, you're talking about, you hear Johnny Bryant, Taylor Jenkins, like I hate the idea of hiring an assistant who's never been a head coach. I mean, the expectations for this team next year are huge. It's like you have to at least get back to the conference finals, especially with the Celtics probably not having Tatum next year. So I don't see the necessarily like upgrade automatically. I know some people think Thibodeau is holding this team back. Maybe the offense was a little archaic, but I don't know. I'm a little skeptical they're going to end up with a better coach.
Yeah, you also mentioned like I feel like it was for the whole fan base, even everyone was if they lost to the Pistons or if they got blown out by the Celtics, like that would be it for him. Is there anything like you saw like in the conference finals that you think was like the nail in the coffin for him? Because it always felt like if he even got there, that would be a successful season. So like what in that series do you think kind of made them make this decision to fire him?
I don't think I think when you fire a coach, I don't think it's ever like one thing. I don't think it's like, well, we did beat the Pacers, and I think it was probably there were people in that front office. I don't think Leon Rose, but there are people in that front office you hear that you know that weren't didn't love him, that felt that they needed a different direction, that maybe felt that they weren't maximizing their talent. I disagree with that. But you hear that, I mean, I don't think it was like one thing. Now I think Leon Rose has to take some heat for. I mean, their two best players are non-defenders, and that's what killed them against the Pacers. Is you have Brunson and Cat, and neither guy is a good defender, and that's really, they're not losing these. I know everyone's saying, well, they're not losing these games because their offense. They were losing these games because their defense, because their transition defense, because they couldn't stop slow Siakam. And to me, that's whoever the next coach is. That's going to be a big question. Is like, how do you get to the next level when your two best players are defensive liabilities? I know there were questions like playing cat and drop coverage and isn't best suited for him. You've heard that. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think the next coach is going to have some major questions about how do you get this team to be the next level when you have kind of two one-dimensional players. As much as I love Brunson, he's small, he's not all that athletic. He struggles on the defensive end, and you saw the Pacers hunt both Towns and Brunson and really hurt the Knicks that way.
Yeah. I think there's one thing that Knicks fans point to most when complaining about Thibodeau and folks who are approving of this coaching switch is his use of players, the rotation, the lack of rest that players get, especially as the playoffs wane on, reluctance to switch up the lineup, didn't do so until the ECF, bringing in a guy like DeLon Wright, Landry Shamet. Is that for you a big enough contributor? Do you think that that was a big reason why they moved on from him? Do you think that that's something that's being overblown? Is that something that is his coaching philosophy in that sense something that you approved of, or is that something that you think could have been improved and maybe would have made a difference in that Indiana series?
I mean, it's DeLon Wright and Landry Shamet. Like, let's not act like they have this loaded bench and he refused to play it. I mean, when they traded Towns, they hurt their depth. They traded 2 for 1, and they really hurt their depth. And like, yes, Landry Shamet and DeLon Wright had some nice moments against the Pacers. There's no question about that. But this idea that the Knicks were too run down to deal with the Pacers and it was because guys were playing too many minutes to me is ridiculous. Like the Pacers are just a more athletic, deeper team. Um, and the Knicks, when they traded for Towns, the trade, I don't, Towns obviously is a very good player, but like, I don't, are they better with Towns than they would have been with Randall and DiVincenzo? I don't know. Now, obviously, the question is Mitchell Robinson. And, during the regular season, they obviously were a better team because Robinson only played 17 games. It would have been tough to play that regular season without a real center you can count on. And obviously, Towns had a great regular season. But, when you're talking about the playoffs, I mean, it's 2 for 1 there. You gave up 2 good players for 1. And that's one thing that they've got to address is they've got to extend that bench. Yes, does Thibodeau sometimes does he play starters too much? Yeah. Does he maybe not use the bench enough? Fine, but they didn't lose this series because Landry Shamet and DeLon Wright didn't play enough, or because Tyler Kolek wasn't in the rotation. Like it's to me it's absurd. Like yes, they need to have a better, deeper bench, no question about that. But I don't think it's like Thibodeau had a guy you could play 20 minutes there who would be a difference maker, just didn't play him. I just don't see that.
I think also like looking at the talent that they had in this roster, it kind of came out that story a couple of days ago that like guys didn't know their roles. Do you think that was more just players that weren't happy in their roles, that in those exit meetings with Dolan and Leon Rose, they just weren't happy with how the situation Tiz was putting them in? Or do you think it was more of a coaching thing where they really didn't know what they were supposed to be doing out there? Because there's always that weird in between of like, they could say, oh, I didn't know what I was doing, but they really just weren't happy.
Yeah, I didn't see that at all, man. I really didn't. I mean, I think
Hmm.
it's more of not liking roles or
Hmm.
I you want. I mean, look, no one complained about their roles in the Celtics series or the Pistons series. Like it didn't seem like an issue then. Um, I think it's easy to scapegoat someone when he's on the way out, and I think clearly that's kind of happening with certain factions. And Thibodeau did a great job here. 5 years, 4 playoffs, won 4 playoff series. Um, took the Knicks from absolute irrelevance to being one of the best franchises in the league. We'll see what they do next. I just tell you, it's I can see I have a much easier time seeing them wind up with a worse coach than a better coach.
Yeah, let's talk about what comes next. You already listed a couple names, and there's a bunch in the rumor mill. You talked about Taylor Jenkins. Johnny Bryant was an assistant in New York until this past year. Other guys mentioned Jay Wright, Dan Hurley on the college side, Michael Malone, JVG, Budenholzer. Any of those names you really like? Anyone you think might be the favorite for the job? Anyone that's your favorite for the job?
Yeah, I don't look. I don't think Jay Wright's going to coach again. I don't see that happening. I know his guys are here. I don't think that will happen. Um, Danny Hurley, I don't think the Knicks have any interest in. Doesn't sound like Danny wants to go to the NBA anyway. I don't think the NBA fits him at all. I did kind of get a kick out of like Hurley saying we're not doing that again. He's not interested. Like Knicks, I don't think the Knicks had any interest in Danny Hurley. Like it doesn't make any sense to me why they would have interest in him. Um, I mean, the guy, if you want to upgrade, and look, I don't think there's any chance of this happening. But the guy that I would go all out for and see what it would take would be Eric Spoelstra. You want a coaching upgrade, that's who you go get. Now, I don't think there's any really much of a chance of that happening. So let's be clear on that. But that would be the guy that I would really try to go hard after. I mean, Jason Kidd would be okay. He's got experience. He's obviously knows this area. Got to the conference finals last year. Has a relationship with Brunson. I I know people are high on Johnny Bryant. I'm very wary of hiring an assistant coach without any head coaching experience for a job like this that's going to have immense pressure, scrutiny, incredibly high expectations. I don't think Jenkins would be a bad move. He's pretty successful in Memphis before having being at odds with the GM there, and obviously dealt with a ton of injuries and other stuff with John Morant. Um, Budenholzer is kind of more of a retread. I don't love the idea of that, but I would still prefer someone like him over an assistant who hasn't been, um, doesn't have any experience. But in terms of guys available, probably Kidd or Jenkins would be my top two guys that you can get. But if we're in fantasy land, I would love them to get Eric Spoelstra, but I just don't know how realistic that is.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned like the high pressure too of coaching in New York. Like, how like intriguing is this job? You think like, I mean, you have a team with all this talent that just went to the Eastern Conference Finals, but then it's also Thibodeau just got fired after 5 successful seasons. So like, looking at other coaches around the league, especially a guy like Jason Kidd who would have to like resign or get traded. Like, how intriguing is this job? You think to other coaches?
I think it depends on the personality. I definitely think it's an intriguing job. Um, and look, it's the NBA. I think most people don't, you know, you, most coaches don't last more than 4 or 5 years. It's just the way of the NBA. It's, you know, I, I could see someone being wary of it, but I also could see someone with a big personality being like, well, that's the life of this thing. I can go there and win a title, and that's the thing. Like this is franchise hasn't won a title since 1973. You're the coach to win a championship with the Knicks. You're immortalized forever. So I think that's also a factor, and you have some really good pieces, and they're obviously going to build out their depth a little bit. That's something they have to do. I don't think there's any question about that. Um, so yeah, I think it depends on the person, but I do think it's a very appealing job.
Yeah. You talk about the market in New York being super demanding, cutthroat for coaches, but the same goes for players. And the Knicks are heading into an offseason where they bring in a roster with a ton of talent, and you can't be upset about an ECF appearance, but also a lot of question marks, a lot of questions to answer from this current team. So, is there anyone that you see the Knicks moving off of from who they have rostered right now? Any targets you'd see them bringing in free agency? Any general strategy that you see them taking as an approach towards free agency?
Look, there are going to be rumors and whispers and all that stuff. I have a hard time seeing them making a major move. I would not go near Kevin Durant. He's aging. I think that'd be a huge mistake. I know everyone's preoccupied with Giannis, but and he's great. There's no question about that. But it's going to take a ton to get him, and it'll be another thing where you're hurting your depth. And we just saw in the playoffs where the Knicks' lack of depth hurt them. Like you're really going to do a 2 or 3 for 1 and now have even less depth. I know this idea. Well, Giannis is great. Guys will play for the veteran minimum. Like I I think the way to go is to build out your depth and get more good players, not less. Um, you just got to the conference finals with this roster. I mean, if the game one doesn't happen, you probably win that series and you're in the finals. Now, I don't think the Knicks would have beat the Thunder, but you'd be in the finals. Um, I think that's something not to forget is I mean, if that Halliburton shot doesn't hit the back rim and somehow go in, you know, we're probably looking at game seven and that whole series is different. Knicks probably would have won the series. I'm very confident to say if the Knicks win game one, they would have won that series. I don't think they would have lost game two. Now maybe they don't win game three with that crazy comeback, but you're probably looking at a Knicks series victory. That game one changed everything. And so I think you want to be careful about overreacting, especially what if the Pacers win this series? So what if they win the final title? So you were that close to beating the team that won the championship, and now you're gonna make drastic changes. I just think they need to be careful about overreacting.
Yeah, especially if you're going out and getting a guy like Giannis, you're gonna have to give up like even a lot of your starters. So like if they were to like go away from getting a star, getting a KD, getting a Giannis, are there any specific names you'd think of like to add to this bench depth? Because even regardless of how the starting lineup is now, they're very cap restraint. I don't think they have a ton of money. So like what are like positions are like people you think they can address while also trying to stay under that second apron?
Yeah, I think they have the taxpayers mid level, which are
Mhm.
what's around five point
It's like
seven.
five, I think it's 5 million, something like that.
Yeah, so you know, I think they could use another defender, like a 3-4. You watch OKC and they've got four of these guys. Knicks have obviously two very good defenders in Bridges and Anunoby, but they could use more. I think it's one thing you learn about the league. You can never have enough guys who can guard two, three, fours. Never have enough of them. So I think maybe you look at that. I mean, they could clearly use a backup point guard, unless they think Tyler Kola could be that guy. I don't. I haven't seen any reason to believe he can yet. Um, but like the five guys are going to be, or the four guys, I guess. I'd like to see Hart move to the bench, as like a six-man energy guy. Do you start Towns with Robinson? I think that's one thing. Now the other thing, Robinson is like you got to be careful. He's injury prone, and I think this was like a blueprint for his effectiveness, where like he doesn't play it now. I'm not saying 17 games next year, but like you don't want him playing 60, 70 games and then he's worn down by the playoffs. You want what you just had in the playoffs with Robinson. So that's kind of the tricky thing, with playing the two big man starting lineup, is like you don't want to wear Robinson out for the playoffs, but like no name specifically, but they could clearly use another wing defender. I would think another ball handler, not like just a back, like a guy who could play with Brunson. I'd like to see Miles McBride's role increase. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's terrific two-way player, and feel like he could give you more minutes next year. But yeah, so no names, but just to me, it's all about they need more good players. They didn't have enough of them this year.
Yeah. Knicks have a lot of work cut out for them this summer. To wrap it up, we'll stay maybe a little bit more on the positive side and also on the immediate side. It's a huge week in sports. And this is not even talking about the Stanley Cup because I feel like maybe that's even too offbeat for right now. But two main events being the NBA Finals. Game one went to the Pacers, absolutely stole it, very similar to game one against New York. And then also the first installment of Red Sox Yankees for the 2025 MLB season tonight. Do you have any predictions on how either of those series play out?
Still like the Thunder. I mean, last night was incredible. Absolute stunner. I was out watching with a buddy, and after the third quarter, when it was a 15-point game with 9 minutes left, I was like, all right, let's go. We left. Pretty amazing. The Pacers are incredible. They really are. And like I've said this for a few weeks now. Like I feel like they're criminally underrated. Like the Knicks were the favorite against them. Everyone thought the Knicks would just beat them. And I didn't necessarily think that. I picked the Knicks in seven, but like I thought it was an absolute toss-up series. The Pacers are everything the Celtics weren't in the playoffs this year. They're tough, they're resilient, they're physical. The Celtics completely folded against the Knicks when adversity showed. And I'm talking before the Tatum injury. Completely folded. The Pacers are everything. Like in talent, the Celtics should have been in the finals. Let's be real. They should have been. But you know what? They were soft this year. They were soft. And the Pacers are everything the Celtics weren't. I still like OKC. I now think this is a 6 or 7 game series. I just still think OKC's better. They're just so good. But man, the Pacers are tough. As for the Yankees, I mean, the Yankees next important, in my opinion, the Yankees next important game is October. That division's terrible. The Red Sox are a mess. The Orioles are awful, which is a big surprise. I know the Blue Jays and the Rays are kind of hanging around 5 games back, but I don't take either of them seriously. The Yankees are going to cruise to the division title. Look, the Yankees are just got Jazz back. You're going to get Stanton back eventually. You're going to get Heel. The Yankees are going to win 95 to 100, and probably going to play the Tigers in the ALCS, and that's what it's all going to be about. Um, I'd be stunned if the Yankees don't win at least 2 or 3 this weekend. I don't think the Red Sox are any good. I know the Yankees can be kind of up and down a little bit with that lineup. Now you don't have Weaver, so there's some questions at the back end, but I mean, the division's a mess. I think I'd be I think the AL is a two-team league. I do. I don't the Guardians have good pitching. We all saw this week they can't hit. It's the Yankees and the Tigers. The Yankees should absolutely get to the LCS. And it's hard to get juiced up for the series this weekend when you consider the Red Sox are just not very good.
A lot to look forward to this summer in New York and beyond as we head towards October, both for the Yankees and for the 2025-26 Knicks season. In the meantime, Zach Braziller, New York Post reporter, writer, jack of all trades, thanks so much for coming on today. We'll be back in just a minute. You're listening to One on One.